On the night of March 17th, 2019, at 2:47 in the morning, I walked barefoot toward the Arabian Sea with a single purpose: not to return. The black waves called to me like a promise of eternal silence. I was 28 years old with 3 palaces in my name, a fortune I couldn't count, and an emptiness in my chest so deep it swallowed me alive every single second. My name is Faisal bin Harman, and that night I should have ceased to exist. But someone, had other plans. I was born in Riyadh, into one of the most powerful families in the kingdom. My first memory isn't of toys or laughter. It's of my father beating a servant unconscious because the tea was lukewarm. I was 4 years old. My mother covered my eyes, but the sound of those blows became engraved somewhere dark in my soul. That was life behind the marble walls, privilege stained with blood, forced smiles over abysses of cruelty. At age 7, I met Yusuf, a Filipino gardener who cared for the palace rose gardens. He was different. While the other servants walked with heads down and fear drawn on their faces, he whistled soft songs and smiled at me with a peace I had never seen. One day I found him crying behind the main fountain, holding a small wooden cross in his trembling hands. "Why are you crying, Yusuf?" I asked him. He looked at me with eyes filled with a strange light. "I cry from gratitude, little prince, because Jesus loves me even here, so far from my home." At that time I didn't understand his words, but something in his voice planted a seed in my child's heart, a seed my family would try to rip out over the next 20 years. 3 weeks later, Yusuf disappeared. I heard the guards say they deported him for inappropriate religious activities. I never forgot his face. I grew up fast and wrong. At 13, I was sent to a military academy in the desert where the sons of royalty learned to be real men. There I saw things that erased what little innocence remained in me. I saw my older cousin order brutal punishments on soldiers for minimal mistakes. I saw celebrations after executions. I saw how violence disguised itself as honor and cruelty as discipline. My adolescence was hell made of impossible expectations. I had to be the perfect warrior, the shrewd negotiator, the relentless leader. Every night I looked in the mirror and saw a stranger. That young man's eyes were dead long before his body decided to follow them. At 19, I lost Layla, my only true friend, a distant cousin with whom I shared dreams of escape. She was forced to marry a man 30 years older. 2 months later, I received the news. Layla was no longer with us, officially a domestic accident, but I knew the truth in my family's silences. I tried to drown the pain in private parties in Dubai, on yachts in the Mediterranean, in any distraction I could buy with infinite money. Nothing worked. The emptiness grew. I became an expert at smiling during business meetings while secretly planning my end. At 25, I married the daughter of another powerful prince, a political transaction disguised as marriage. We didn't even pretend love. One stormy night in the desert during a royal hunt, I walked away from the group. I walked until I was lost among the dunes. I wanted the sand to swallow me. Then an old Bedouin appeared out of nowhere, with eyes that seemed to see through me. "Prince of the land, but beggar of soul," he said with a voice weathered by years. "The one who seeks you is not in these deserts. He is where water meets sky, and when you find him, not even chains of gold can hold you back." Before I could respond, he disappeared into the shadows. My guards found me an hour later, trembling and confused. I never told them about the old man. They never reported seeing him, but his words remained engraved in my mind like burning thorns. The next 3 years were a downward spiral, endless meetings where business decisions moved nations, trips to European capitals where luxury was obscene and boredom was deadly, calls from my father demanding results, heirs, perfection. My wife and I were polite strangers sharing a palace. I took pills to sleep, then pills to wake up, then pills to feel nothing. I consulted private doctors in Switzerland who prescribed more pills and charged fortunes to tell me I was stressed. But I knew the truth. I wasn't stressed. I was empty. Completely, absolutely empty. February 2019, a family meeting in Riyadh that turned into a trial. My younger brother Khalid, always jealous of my position, publicly accused me of weakness and lack of commitment to the family. My father, instead of defending me, agreed coldly. "Faisal has become weak. He is not worthy of the crown his name carries." Those words were the final sentence. I left that room knowing my life, as it was, had ended. I could continue breathing, but I was already destroyed inside. In the following weeks, I organized my affairs with terrifying calm. I wrote letters that would never be sent. I reviewed wills that no one would read with genuine sadness. And every night, I stood on the balcony of my room looking west, where I knew the sea was. On March 17th, I made my final decision. That afternoon, there was another meeting. More accusations, more disappointments. My father looked at me with contempt and said, "Sometimes I think it would have been better if you had never been born." His words didn't hurt me. There was nothing left that could break. That night I waited for the palace to sleep. I removed my silk robes and gold rings. I put on simple clothes, almost like a servant's. I took the keys to one of my least flashy cars and drove toward Jeddah, toward the sea, toward the end. The journey from Riyadh lasted 5 hours. 5 hours of deserted highways under a starless sky. I didn't play music. I didn't call anyone. Just the sound of the engine and my own shattered thoughts. Each kilometer was a countdown. 100 kilometers to oblivion. 50? 20? I arrived at the coast when the clocks showed 2:15 in the morning. I parked the car far from the tourist zones, on a beach I knew from my childhood. My mother, before she became part of the system that destroyed me, used to bring me here to watch the sunrise. "The sea is eternal, Faisal," she would say. "We are only visitors." That night, I planned to be more than a visitor. I planned to stay forever. I walked across the sand, still warm from the previous day. The Arabian Sea stretched before me like a hungry black mouth. The waves broke with a hypnotic sound, almost like a lullaby. Perfect, peaceful, final. Before entering the water, I took from my pocket a letter I had written that afternoon, the last letter. It had no real recipient because there was no one who would truly care enough to read it with their heart. I left it under a stone, knowing the wind would probably take it away. How appropriate. My entire life had been carried by winds I could never control. I removed my shirt, my pants. I stood in my underwear before the liquid giant that awaited me. The water was surprisingly warm when I touched the shore with my feet. I took one step, another. The water reached my knees, then my waist. I kept walking. I was in no hurry. For the first time in years, I was in absolutely no hurry. When the water reached my chest, I stopped for a moment. I looked back toward the beach, toward the distant lights of Jeddah, toward everything I was leaving behind. I felt no sadness, no relief, just nothing. Complete and absolute numbness. And that was exactly what I had been searching for so long. "Forgive me, Mother," I whispered to the wind. Not because I believed she would hear me, but because last words should be something, anything, so as not to depart in complete silence. Then I dove. The water covered my head, and everything became a muted, distorted world. I opened my eyes under the salt water. It burned, but I didn't care. I let the air leave my lungs in small bubbles that rose toward a surface I was no longer interested in reaching. My body, by instinct, tried to swim upward, to fight, to survive. But my mind, my destroyed will, ordered it to stay still. I descended deeper and deeper. The sea floor in that region wasn't very deep, maybe 20 feet, but it was enough. Enough for my lungs to begin burning with desperation. Enough for my vision to fill with black spots. Enough for everything to begin disappearing into merciful darkness. And then it happened. I felt a hand. No, I didn't feel it like when someone touches you and your skin registers pressure and temperature. This was different. This hand grabbed me by the right arm with a force that was not human. A force that passed through my skin, my muscles, my bones, and touched something much deeper. My very soul felt that grip. My eyes opened suddenly underwater. There was no one there, no divers, no boats above, no possible explanation for what I was feeling. The hand was pulling me upward with absolute determination, as if saying, "No, not yet. Not this way." I tried to resist. I tried to break free, but it was like trying to fight a current of 1,000 tons. I was being lifted, pushed, forced to rise against my own will to stay down there. And then, in the middle of this struggle underwater, I saw something that changed everything. A figure of light. It wasn't the reflection of the moon. It wasn't a hallucination from lack of oxygen. It was a real presence, tangible in its impossibility, standing underwater with me. It had no defined face, but it had human form, and from this form emanated a light that didn't come from any external source, but from itself. A white and golden light that transformed the dark water of the sea into something crystalline and beautiful. The figure didn't speak with audible words, but I heard a voice, clear, firm, unmistakable, in perfect Arabic, the language of my childhood. It said to me, "Not yet, Faisal. Your life is not yours to end. I have plans for you, plans of hope, not despair, plans of life, not of ending." And then the hand pushed me with such force toward the surface that I shot out of the water as if an explosion had launched me. I broke the surface, coughing, screaming, spitting salt water. My lungs burned with a pain that was glorious because it meant I was still alive. I swam to the shore with an energy I didn't know I had. My arms moved wildly, my heart pounded as if it would explode. I reached the sand and dragged myself out of the water, collapsing face down, vomiting seawater and sobbing uncontrollably. "Why?" I screamed at the sky. "Why didn't you let me go? Why?" This time there was no audible answer, but I felt something I had never, in my 28 years of life, felt before. Peace. An inexplicable, irrational, completely out of place peace considering what had just happened. A peace that surpassed any logical understanding. I stayed collapsed on that beach until the sky began to change from black to dark gray. The first signs of dawn. I trembled not just from cold, but from something much deeper. My mind tried to process the impossible. The hand, the figure of light, the voice. Everything was impossible, and yet it had happened. It was more real than anything I had experienced in my life of luxury and lies. When the sun began to appear on the horizon, I heard footsteps in the sand. I lifted my head, still weak, and saw an elderly man walking toward me. He wore simple fisherman's clothes and carried a net on his shoulder. His eyes, upon seeing me there, half naked and obviously destroyed, filled with immediate concern. "My son, what happened to you?" he asked in Arabic, with an accent I recognized as Egyptian. He knelt beside me, leaving his net in the sand. I couldn't speak. I just looked at him with eyes that must have seemed insane. He understood something without needing words. He removed his old coat and placed it over my shoulders. Then he sat beside me in silence, watching the sunrise with me, as if he had all the time in the world for a broken stranger on the beach. After what seemed like hours, but was probably only minutes, I finally found my voice. Something saved me underwater. There was no one there, but I felt a hand. I saw a light. I heard a voice. The fisherman didn't laugh. He didn't seem surprised. He just nodded slowly, as if what I had just said was the most normal thing in the world. "Jesus," he said simply. "He has that habit. He appears when we need him most, especially when we've lost all hope." That word, Jesus, the same word that Yusuf, the gardener of my childhood, had whispered with such reverence. The same word my family had taught me to hate and despise. The same word that, in that moment on that beach, while the sun painted the sky orange and pink, sounded like the answer to a question I had been asking my entire life without knowing I was asking it. "How do you know?" I asked, my voice almost a broken whisper. The fisherman smiled, and in his smile I saw the same kind of inexplicable peace I had felt in the sand. "Because he also saved me once, son. Not in the sea, but in a prison cell in Cairo. He saved me when I also wanted to cease existing, and since then, my life is no longer mine, it's his, and believe me when I say this, it's better that way." We stayed on that beach until the sun was completely high. The fisherman, whose name I never learned, shared with me bread and water from his small bag. He spoke to me of a man named Jesus, who walked on water, calmed storms, raised the lost. He spoke to me as if sharing news about a close friend, not reciting ancient religious stories. When I finally stood to leave, still trembling but somehow stronger, the fisherman held my hands. "Go home, Prince," he said, and I realized he somehow knew who I was. "But remember, you are no longer the same person who entered the water. You died down there, and he raised you up. Now you need to discover what for." I walked back to my car like a man in a dream. The world seemed different, the colors more vivid, the sounds clearer, even the air had a different taste. I drove back to Riyadh in a silence that was no longer empty, but filled with something I couldn't name. Something that felt like the beginning of everything, just when I thought I had reached the end. That night, in my room in the palace, I knelt for the first time in my life. Not in ritual prayer, but in real supplication. "I don't know who you are," I whispered to the darkness. "I don't know what you want from me, but if you saved me for a reason, show me. Because I cannot continue living in this cage, not after feeling your hand under the water." I didn't expect an answer, yet when I finally closed my eyes that night, I slept without pills for the first time in years, and I dreamed of light. The following days were the strangest of my life. Externally, everything continued the same. I attended meetings, I signed documents, I smiled on necessary occasions, but internally something had changed so radically that I felt like a spy in my own life. Every conversation about power and money sounded empty. Every display of wealth seemed obscene. And every night, when I was finally alone, I found myself thinking about that hand underwater and the voice that told me it had plans for me. I began searching secretly. The internet became my clandestine university. Using private connections and browsers that hid my identity, I read about Jesus, about Christianity, about people who had encounters similar to mine. Each story resonated with me in a way that no religious doctrine from my previous life had done. These weren't empty rules or soulless rituals. This was a relationship, a love that pursued, a grace that didn't need to be earned. 3 weeks after the sea, I had my second supernatural encounter. It was in a dream, but more real than any waking moment. I saw a man walking toward me through a burning desert. He wasn't burning. The fire moved away from him. When he reached me, I could see his face, eyes filled with a compassion so deep that I fell to my knees in the dream. "Faisal?" He spoke my name like it was a song. "I have waited your entire life for this moment. All the pain you suffered, all the darkness you knew, everything was to bring you here, to me. You're no longer alone. You will never be alone again." He extended his hand, and in the palm I could see a scar, an old wound, but somehow still fresh. "These are for you," he said, "to free you from the cage, to free you from the chains, to give you life, life in abundance." I woke up crying. I cried like I hadn't cried since I was a child. Tears that washed away years of hardness, tears that cleansed decades of poison. And in that crying, something broke inside me. The walls I had built around my heart crumbled, and for the first time, I felt something that looked dangerously like love. Not romantic, not familial, something much greater, something eternal. I knew what I had to do. But I also knew how much it would cost me. In Saudi Arabia, abandoning Islam for Christianity wasn't just a personal change. It was treason. It was family shame. It was, in many cases, a silent death sentence. But after being underwater, after being lifted by that hand, the fear of consequences seemed small compared to the fear of rejecting what had clearly sought me out. I began researching how others in my position had found Christian communities. I discovered there was an underground network, small, extremely careful, but it existed. Expatriate workers, discreet diplomats, Saudi converts living dangerous double lives. It took weeks of cautious contacts, encrypted messages, and meetings in unlikely places before someone finally agreed to meet with me. His name was Marcus, a British engineer working for an oil company. We met in an underground parking garage of a mall in Riyadh, inside his car with tinted windows. He was a man of about 40 with eyes that had seen things he didn't share easily. "I know who you are," he told me without preamble, "and I know what you're risking by contacting me. So I'll be direct. If this is curiosity, I can give you books and be on my way. But if this is real, if you truly believe Jesus found you under that water, then this will change everything in your life, your family, your position, your security, everything. Are you sure?" I looked into his eyes. I was willing to end my life. Now I'm willing to lose it if necessary. But I need to know the truth. I need to understand why I was saved. Marcus nodded slowly. "Then we begin tonight. There's a place, a basement in the house of a Filipino diplomat. We meet there on Friday nights when the rest of the world is in their mosques. Small group, 5, maybe 6 people. We study the Bible. We pray. We learn to follow Jesus in secret. It's dangerous. But if God is calling you, there's no safer place." That night changed my life. The basement was small, barely decorated, with old carpets on the floor and a single lamp providing dim light. There were 4 other people there, 2 Filipinos, an Ethiopian woman, and, to my complete surprise, a young Saudi man my age. We looked at each other with mutual recognition. We both knew what it meant to be there, and we both had crossed a line from which there was no easy return. Marcus opened a worn Bible. Today we're going to read about a man named Nicodemus. He was a powerful religious leader who came to Jesus at night in secret because he was afraid of what others would think. Does that sound familiar to you? For the next 2 hours we read and discussed, but it wasn't like any academic study I'd done before. It was personal. It was alive. Each verse seemed to leap from the page and speak directly to my situation. When we reached the words, "You must be born again," I felt as if someone had turned on a light in a room that had been dark my entire life. "Born again?" I repeated. "Is that what happened to me in the sea? I died and was born again?" The young Saudi man, whose name was Ahmed, spoke for the first time. "Brother, all of us had to let ourselves die so we could truly begin. I lost my family 2 years ago when they discovered my faith. But I gained something far more valuable. I gained life. Real life." Tears started again. I couldn't control them. Marcus placed a hand on my shoulder. "It's okay to cry here, Faisal. This is a safe place. Here you can be who you really are, not who your surname says you must be." Over the next 3 months, that basement became my true home. Every Friday I invented excuses, late business meetings, property inspections, anything that justified my absence. And every Friday I descended to that humble space and felt more peace than in all my palaces combined. I learned about grace, about forgiveness, about a God who didn't demand perfection but offered unconditional love. Each concept was revolutionary. Each teaching dismantled something from the hardness I had accumulated. Marcus gave me my own Bible, hidden in the cover of a business book. I read under the covers with a flashlight, like a child with forbidden treasure. The dreams continued. Almost every night, Jesus appeared in some form. Sometimes he spoke. Sometimes he was just there, a comforting presence in my nights that had previously been nightmares. One night I dreamed he was washing my feet. I woke up sobbing because I understood the symbolism. The King of the universe kneeling before me, serving me, when my entire life had been served by people who feared me. In August, 4 months after the sea, I knew I was ready. I gathered the group in the basement and said, "I want to give my life completely to him. I want to be baptized. I want to follow him no matter the cost." Marcus and the others looked at each other. "You understand that once you take this step, there's no going back? Not just spiritually, but practically? If your family discovers this..." "I understand," I interrupted. "And I've already made my decision. I made it underwater when that hand grabbed me and told me it had plans for me. Since then, everything has just been confirming what I already knew. I belong to him." They made arrangements. 1 week later, in a safe house on the outskirts of Riyadh, in a bathtub filled with water blessed with prayers, Marcus baptized me. "In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, I baptize you, Faisal, buried with Christ in his death, raised to walk in newness of life." When I came out of the water that time, there was no terror or confusion, only pure joy. Joy so intense that I laughed and cried at the same time. The others embraced me, celebrating as if I had won the lottery. And in a way, I had. I had one life. If this testimony is touching your heart, if you feel God is also calling you out of your own darkness, don't ignore it. Share this story right now because someone else needs to know that no matter how deep you've fallen, His hand can reach you there. But my joy wouldn't last long without being tested. Keeping secrets in a family like mine, where control and surveillance were constant, was practically impossible. And my brother Khalid, always looking for ways to outdo or destroy me, was watching. On November 14th, 2019, my carefully constructed world collapsed in minutes. I had been careless, too trusting, perhaps blinded by the happiness of my new faith. I left my Bible hidden in the false drawer of my desk, thinking it was safe enough. It wasn't. Khalid entered my room while I was in a meeting, officially looking for some documents. In reality, he was hunting. He found the Bible. He also found the notes I had made during the studies, pages filled with verses and reflections. He found a small wooden cross that Marcus had given me. He found perfect evidence of my betrayal. When I returned that afternoon, my father was waiting for me in his private office. He wasn't alone. Khalid was there with a smile he didn't try to hide. 2 of my uncles, men known for their inflexible harshness, and a religious sheikh from the family, the same one who presided over my forced marriage. My Bible was on my father's desk like evidence in a trial. "What is this?" my father asked, his voice dangerously calm. The kind of calm that precedes the most violent storms. I could have lied. I could have invented something. Claimed it was academic research or anthropological curiosity. But I looked into those eyes that had never shown me true love, and something inside me broke. Not from fear, but from liberation. I didn't want to lie anymore. I couldn't lie anymore. "It's the Bible," I said simply. "I've been reading it. I've been studying it. And I found more truth in those pages than in my entire previous life." The silence that followed was more terrifying than any scream. The sheikh stood, trembling with rage. "Are you confessing apostasy in front of witnesses?" I thought of the hand underwater, the voice that told me it had plans for me, Jesus washing my feet in my dreams, and I found a courage I didn't know I possessed. I'm confessing that I found who has been seeking me all along, that Jesus saved me when I tried to end my life, that His hand lifted me from the bottom of the sea, and that now I belong to Him, no matter what it costs. My father stood so quickly that his chair fell backward. His face turned red with a rage I had never seen before. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The shame you've brought on this family? The danger you've put us all in?" "Father, Don't call me father," he roared. "A father doesn't have traitorous sons. A father doesn't have sons who spit on family honor. A father doesn't have sons like you." His words should have destroyed me. Months ago they would have. But standing there under his condemnation, I felt that inexplicable peace again. The same one I had felt on the beach, the same one Marcus told me, surpassed all understanding. I was being rejected by my earthly family, but I had been adopted by a heavenly family. And that, somehow, was enough. "Khalid," my father ordered without taking his eyes off me, "call the guards. Faisal will be transferred to the desert house. There he'll have time to reflect on his decisions." The desert house was a family euphemism for a private prison, a remote complex 3 hours from Riyadh, where the family dealt with delicate matters away from curious eyes. I had heard stories about that place, problematic cousins who went there and came back different, broken, obedient. The guards entered, enormous men. They grabbed me by the arms. I tried to resist, but it was useless. As they dragged me away, I looked at my father one last time. "Dad, please, just listen to me. If you knew what I lived through, if you knew what I know for certain..." He interrupted me with absolute coldness. "I no longer have an eldest son. Faisal bin Harman ceased to exist today. What remains is a problem that needs to be resolved." They took me to a vehicle without windows. Khalid followed to the car, and before they closed the doors, he leaned toward me with that poisonous smile. "I always knew you were weak, brother, but I didn't think you were stupid. You'll wish you had stayed under that water." The journey to the desert was an eternity of darkness and growing terror. When they finally stopped and pulled me out, the desert sun temporarily blinded me. I blinked until I could see the complex. High walls, barbed wire, armed guards, a prison with everything except the official name. They took me to a small room. It wasn't a dirty cell, but it wasn't comfortable either. White walls, a bed, a bathroom. A single window with bars looking out at the infinite desert. They left me there without explanation. Hours passed, then days. Food appeared 3 times a day through a slot in the door. No one spoke to me. No one answered when I called. On the 3rd day, the correction began. They brought the sheikh and a religious counselor. For hours they bombarded me with arguments, with veiled threats of hell, with warnings about Allah's judgment. I responded with what I had learned, with what I had experienced, with the truth that now lived in my heart. "I saw Jesus," I told them, my voice not wavering. "Not in a book, not in a story. Personally, under the water. When I was trying to end my life, He grabbed me, He lifted me, He saved me. How can I deny that? How can I pretend it didn't happen?" The sheikh slapped me. You're possessed by demons. What you saw was Satan deceiving you. But I was no longer afraid of their words. I had felt the difference between darkness and light. If the demon saved me from self-destruction, gave me peace instead of torment, filled me with love instead of hate, then his name has changed. Because what I received was life, not destruction. Days became weeks. The correction intensified. Sleep deprivation, total isolation, 12-hour sermons, constant psychological pressure. They showed me photos of my mother crying, saying I was destroying her. They threatened to take everything from me, to make me disappear officially, to make it so I had never existed in the family records. Each night in that room where solitude tried to crush me, I prayed. Not formal prayers, but desperate conversations. Jesus, you told me you had plans. You pulled me from the water for a reason. But now I'm at another kind of bottom and I don't know how to get out. Where are you? Do you hear me? And each night that peace returned. Sometimes with dreams. Sometimes just with a sense of presence. Once I swore I saw a light in the corner of my room and a voice whispered, I am with you until the end of the world. I haven't abandoned you. I never will. 1 month after my arrival in the desert, something unexpected happened. One of the guards, an older man who had remained silent throughout this entire time, entered my room outside the normal schedule. He looked around nervously before speaking in a low voice. Prince Faisal, I don't have much time. There are people who know about your situation, people who want to help you. There's a plan to get you out of here, but it must be quick. Your family is talking about more permanent measures. I looked at him, surprised. Who are you? Why would you help me? The guard smiled sadly and lifted the sleeve of his uniform. On his forearm, tattooed and half faded, I could see the outline of a cross. Because I also know that hand that lifts from the bottom, Prince. And those of us who have been saved must help each other. Comment. Amen. If you believe God can change any situation, no matter how impossible it seems. The plan was simple but risky. During the night guard change, there would be a 15-minute window. The Christian guard, whose name was Salem, had coordinated with the underground network. There would be a vehicle waiting 2 kilometers from the complex. I just needed to get there without being detected. In the desert at night, with armed guards searching for me as soon as they discovered my absence. And if they catch me, I asked, what will they do to you? Salem looked at me with eyes that had already accepted the cost. Prince, I already died once. The life I live now is borrowed. A gift. If it ends helping you escape, then it ended with purpose. Don't fear for me. On the night of December 23rd, 2019, 6 weeks after my imprisonment, Salem opened my door. It's now. Run north. Exactly 2 kilometers. Large rocks. Behind them, a car. The keys will be in the exhaust. Go toward the eastern border. There are contacts waiting for you. And may the God who lifted you from the sea guide you through the desert. I ran like I had never run in my life. The sand made each step difficult. The darkness made me stumble over invisible stones. Behind me, I heard the exact moment they discovered my absence. Shouts, alarms, spotlight beams sweeping the desert. Jesus, I prayed while running. I know you pulled me from the water. Please, also pull me from the desert. The rocks appeared like giant ghosts in the darkness. I ran around them, and there, as Salem had promised, was the car. An old vehicle, but functional. I frantically searched the exhaust. My hands touched metal. The keys. The headlights were approaching. I could hear vehicles starting at the complex. I shoved the key in with trembling hands. The motor coughed once, twice. Please, 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 I begged. On the 3rd time, it roared to life. I floored the accelerator and the car jumped forward. No lights, so I wouldn't be seen. Trusting the moon and miracles. Behind me, the pursuit lights grew brighter. They were faster. They would catch me. And then another miracle happened. A sandstorm rose out of nowhere. In seconds, visibility 0. I had to stop because I couldn't see my own hand. But that meant they couldn't see me either. The storm lasted 20 minutes. 20 minutes, that were a gift from God. When it calmed, I continued driving without knowing exactly where, just trusting that the border was somewhere ahead of me. Dawn found me crossing into Jordanian territory through a clandestine passage that the Christian network had used before. There was a man waiting for me on the other side. We didn't exchange names, just a quick embrace and him saying, "Welcome to freedom, brother. Now your new life begins." I cannot reveal the country where I currently live, not for fear for myself, but for the others who helped me get here. What I can say is that it's a place where I can breathe, where I can speak the name of Jesus without whispering, where I can open my Bible without hiding it. And though I miss things about my homeland, the smells, the sounds, even some faces, I have never felt more freedom than in this exile. The first months were a strange mourning process. I cried for the family I lost, though I also recognized I never really had what a family should be. I cried for the life I left behind, though it was a life that was slowly destroying me. I cried for Arabia, my land, knowing I probably could never return. Marcus and the network helped me establish myself. They got me documents, a place to live, connections with a local church of Arab refugees. For the first time in my life, I attended an open worship service, singing out loud, raising hands without fear, hearing a sermon without needing to decipher it in code. I cried through the entire service, tears of liberation, tears of gratitude, tears of amazement before the grace that pursued me from the bottom of the sea to freedom. My baptism in the bathtub had been real and powerful, but the church wanted to celebrate my freedom with a public baptism. 3 months after my arrival, I was baptized again, this time in a river, surrounded by brothers and sisters who had paid similar prices for their faith. When I came out of the water, the pastor shouted, "Faisal bin Harman has ceased to exist. Here stands Faisal the free, son of God, brother of Christ." The community embraced me, adopted me, gave me a family that biology never gave me. There were others like me, Saudis, Iranians, Syrians, Egyptians, each with a story of persecution, each with visible and invisible scars, each with a testimony of how Jesus reached them in their own dark bottoms and lifted them toward the light. But the calling I felt wasn't just to be rescued, but to rescue others. If God saved me from the sea, if I survived the desert prison, if I escaped against all odds, it was for a reason greater than simply my own salvation. The words I heard underwater kept returning. "I have plans for you." I started an online ministry, nothing sophisticated at first, just simple videos where I shared my testimony, where I spoke in Arabic to others in the Arab world who were searching, doubting, or suffering in silence, where I said, "If I could find freedom, you can too. If Jesus reached me at the bottom of the Arabian Sea, he can reach you wherever you are." The responses were overwhelming. Messages from throughout the region, some from the curious, others from skeptics, but many, so many, from people hungry for the truth I had found. Young people trapped in religious systems that promised paradise after death, but gave them hell in life. Abused women who needed to know God loved and valued them. Men destroyed by impossible expectations who needed to hear about grace. One of these messages changed everything again. It came from someone who signed only as H. The message said, "Faisal, I saw your testimony. I am a prince like you. I feel the same emptiness. I am considering the same end you attempted. Is there really something more? Or are you just trying to console yourself with stories?" I responded immediately. I shared not just my story, but my private contact number. H called me that night. We talked for 3 hours. He cried. I cried. I told him every detail. The hand underwater. The figure of light. The voice. The peace. Everything. At the end, we prayed together. A simple prayer. "Jesus, if you are real, as Faisal says, show yourself to me too, because I am lost and don't know how to find the way." 2 weeks later, H wrote me again. I saw him. He came to me in a dream. He called me by my name. He showed me his hands. "And now I know what you said is true. How should I proceed from here?" This was the first of many. Princes, business leaders, high-ranking military officers, people with all the power and money in the world, but with the same emptiness I had known. And one by one, Jesus was calling them, using me, a destroyed man who almost ended his life, to reach others who were at the same edge. The work is dangerous. I receive threats regularly. My family put a price on my capture. Extremist organizations call me a traitor and heretic, but each threat only confirms I'm doing something that matters. That the kingdom of darkness is disturbed because the light is invading territories it considered its own. 6 months ago, I received a message that broke me and at the same time filled me with joy. It was from Salem, the guard who helped me escape. "Prince Faisal, or should I say Brother Faisal, they discovered me after your escape. They tortured me for information. I spent 4 months in prison, but Jesus was with me every day. And now, released by an inexplicable amnesty, I'm out. I'm alive and my faith is stronger than ever. Your escape wasn't in vain. It bore fruit and will continue to bear fruit. If you're hearing this and your heart is being touched, it's not coincidence. God is seeking you right now. Share this testimony immediately, because someone on your contact list is where I was, at the edge of despair, without hope, ready to give up. And this story might be the hand God uses to lift them. Today I live each day as a borrowed gift. Each sunrise is a miracle. Each breath is grace. I lost my biological family, my fortune, my country, my position. I gained something infinitely more valuable: purpose, peace, presence, and the absolute certainty that I'm not alone. I never was, not even at the bottom of the sea. There are still difficult moments, nights when the loneliness of exile weighs heavy, days when news from Arabia breaks my heart, moments when I wonder what would have happened if I had chosen differently. But then I remember the hand underwater, the voice that said, "Not yet," the figure of light. And I know that every sacrifice, every loss, every tear was worth it. Now I work with refugees who fled religious persecution. I help them find peace in their own exiles. I tell my story and see their faces change when they understand they're not alone, that God hasn't forgotten them, that their pain has purpose. I also work with secret converts who still live in hostile countries. I teach them digital security. I connect them with support networks. I give them hope that one day, perhaps, they too can live their faith openly. And I warn them, the cost is real, persecution is real, but the reward is even more real. My mother contacted me a year ago through an intermediary. She said she misses me, that she prays for me, though we both know her prayers are to a different God than mine, that my father never mentions my name, as if he erased my existence from his memory, that Khalid is now the official heir and is enjoying everything I left behind. I sent her a message back, Mom, I love you, I forgive you, and I pray that one day you too will feel the hand that lifted me. Because on that day, you will understand why I left everything, and on that day we will be a real family. She didn't respond. Maybe she never will, but I keep praying, because if Jesus could reach me, a privileged prince drowning in emptiness and darkness, he can reach anyone. I'm sitting now before another sea, not the Arabian, but the Mediterranean. The waves break against the rocks with the same hypnotic rhythm. But when I look at these waters, I don't see an end. I see a beginning. I see the liquid grace that swallowed me and spit me back to life. I see the reflection of a hand that refused to let me go when I wanted to be released. I'm 31 years old now, 3 years since that night. 3 years since I should have ceased to exist. 3 years of life I didn't deserve, but that was given to me freely. And each day of these 3 years has been a living testimony that God doesn't finish with us, where we want to finish with ourselves. If you're hearing this and you feel that same emptiness I felt, if you've considered the same end I sought, if you're standing on your own edge looking at an abyss that promises silence, let me tell you something. There is a hand waiting to grab you. There is a voice ready to say, not yet. There are plans you can't yet see, but that are more beautiful than anything you can imagine. Your sea might not be literal. It might be the depression that drowns you every morning. It might be the anxiety that suffocates you in the middle of crowds. It might be the addiction that drags you to the bottom. It might be the abuse that takes your breath away. It might be the emptiness that no amount of success or money can fill. But I promise you this. The same hand that grabbed me at the bottom of the Arabian Sea can reach you at the bottom of your personal darkness. The same Jesus who stood underwater with me can stand in your storm. The same voice that told me, I have plans for you, wants to say the same to you. You don't need to be a prince. You don't need to have a dramatic story. You just need to be willing to be lifted. To let the hand that offers you life pull you from the place where you seek the end. To trust that there is more, much more, waiting for you on the other side of your surrender. Comment from which country and city you're watching us. I want to know where this testimony is reaching. I want to know how many people the story of how God rescued me is reaching. Because each comment is a confirmation that my life, which should have ended in salt water and darkness, is fulfilling the purpose for which I was saved. If you've never met Jesus personally, if you've never felt that hand, I can guide you through a simple prayer that changed my life forever. It's not magic. These aren't magic words. It's simply opening your heart to someone who has been waiting patiently for that opening. Jesus, I'm tired of being empty. I'm tired of seeking life in things that leave me drier. If you are really seeking me like you sought Faisal, here I am. Lift me from my own bottom. Save me from my own darkness. Take my life that I've led so poorly and do with it what you always wanted to do. Enter my heart. Be my Savior. Be my Lord. Amen? If you prayed that prayer, you just were born again, like me, like thousands of others who felt the hand that lifts from the bottom. And your life, from this moment, is no longer the same. Welcome to the family. Share this testimony with 5 people who need hope. You don't know who in your life is standing at their own edge. You don't know who's considering their own end. This story might be the difference between life and death for someone. Don't wait. The sea no longer calls me to oblivion. Now it reminds me of where I came from. It reminds me that I serve as testimony that no bottom is too deep for God's hand. It reminds me that I'm alive not by chance, but with purpose. And you, hearing this now, you're also alive with purpose. Even if you don't feel it, even if you don't see it, even if everything in your life screams otherwise, there are plans, there is hope. There's a hand waiting to lift you. You just need to let it. May the God who lifted me from the bottom of the Arabian Sea lift you from your own abyss. May the peace that exceeds all understanding fill the emptiness in your heart. May you discover, as I discovered, that real life begins when we finally stop seeking it in the wrong places and allow the one who created us to show us what we were made for. Amen.